Hello everyone. I have 4 poems I'd like to share with you guys tonight, and they all have a theme to do with love, and they all 4 come from my book, Romancing the Void. Alright, the first one I'd like to share is entitled For All of Our Lonely Patterns, and this poem is about marriage. It's about learning to adapt and make the best of the changes that come with living your life with someone else, the things that you didn't expect to happen, the ways that you change as you both continue to grow. One day I kind of started becoming aware of the paradox of marriage. You know, we choose a partner that we love, and a partner chooses us, and they are someone that we essentially love more than anyone else, but we choose to spend the rest of our life with them. But at the same time, by living in such close context with someone else, it's inevitable that they also become the person that you hurt the most, and the person that can hurt you the most. You know, and it's obviously, try not to be intentional about it, but it's kind of comes with the territory, so to speak. So this poem is about that paradox of marriage and starting to recognize that in my own marriage. All right, so this one's called For All of Our Lonely Patterns. Following the roads that lead along the river, the turns and washed out crevices only we know. Under the shadows of moving clouds and the vast Kansas sky, I kissed you in a ring of watching oak trees, the first witnesses of my heart presented on bleeding paper. In the wildflower dance of that never-ending afternoon, I blanketed your body with the wounds I learned to heal before my hand could hold steady enough to untie the ribbon in your hair. So I swallowed all of yesteryear's memories to try and give you a real word, a purity from my lips, untasted by any others but you. The trust in your crying eyes, as if you had seen all of this happen before, somewhere not too different than here, in a dream you used to dream when you were a little girl. And the disappointment of reality became the tripping step of mad love, falling hard for the imperfections of all our failed promises. I never wanted to be what hurt you the most, or a painful chapter in the story you wrote with your skin and your hair and your lips and your love. Is there no other way to exist as close to someone as we have been? Our pain, preserved like rusting metal, lying in the fields where I saw the red tail resting on the fence, his face turned to the sky so that his eyes may better watch the movements upon the ground. All right, the second poem I'd like to share with you is entitled The Ingredients of Us. And this one also has to do with marriage. It's about recognizing the child who your partner is or was, and also your inner child too, who you were, and recognizing that there are patterns and models that were given to us at an early age in our life that became normal for us and has in turn imprinted on us and became patterns that we participate in, sometimes knowingly and other times unknowingly. But recognizing, you know, what was good from what our parents gave us and what was not good that our parents gave us, and then seeing that in my partner and her seeing it in me, and then us deciding what do we want to keep and what do we want to pass on as we create our own family together and build our own home. So that's what this one's about. It's entitled The Ingredients of Us. The ingredients of us are never exact measurements, just thrown together at will and upon necessity, combined with hopeful efforts that something worthy will become of our mixing. a dash of words chosen for us, to define us, to spend our young adult lives trying to unshackle from our identities. A splash of detached mother, a shake of distant father, a pinch of childhood ending too soon, a handful of home that felt unsafe, and a generous amount of life's imperfections. The ingredients of us are the most delicious parts, each tantalizing on its own, spoon-licking trauma nurtured by an unrelenting hand, swirled together in an heirloom bowl, passed down from one generation to the next, wherein each was created the meal of their own making, every part a distinguishing feature of a repeating recipe. And in our time, we took the bowl, added to it the secrets of our family's history, mixed equal portions of good and bad, until our story became a creation of both. And now we eat this bread we inherited, this bread we contributed to, changed slightly, and will pass on to our children in the same mixing bowl, still holding all the cracks of the past, and some new, as evidence of our use. All right, the third poem I'd like to share with you is entitled Anhedonia. And this poem, Anhedonia, means the inability to feel pleasure. Anhedonia. And this poem, it's about love, but it's also, kind of questions like, what is love? Because this poem has to deal with that kind of philosophical understanding that we are all each ultimately alone. We're born alone, we live alone, and we'll all ultimately die alone. Nobody can actually ever know what it's like to experience life as someone else. We can try and we can have empathy and we can connect and we can relate, but there is still always going to be a divide there. So this poem was just kind of recognizing that and having some thoughts come out about that. So, Anhedonia. What's in a word? A world? An ideal? An attempt to conceptualize unattainable connection? To communicate some urge, thought, or reaction to each moment that is birthed through feeling and tempered by experiences which leave the heart forlorn. For we can never truly know one another, not like we know ourselves. Disconnect. A sovereign entity, a solemn monolith, bare-breasted lover adorned in untouched skin, beauty swirling in dance, spirit churning, flawless physique in candid innocence, yet within your movements, a subtle uncertainty, a fraudulent grace where drowning eyes betray the countenance of the many masks you display. And so, you twirl and spin, running from the exposure of certain stillness, concealed in storm, weaving your spell with the dispersing sediment of your heart, forever shrouding any path that leads behind your veil. Moving to feel the vacant flesh you inhabit, a hollow home to the numbing opera you orchestrate. Lips reaching to taste you, to gently press against the distance suspended upon their emotionless shape. Our eyes peering into mutual emptiness, defining the fear beholden in each of us, and all the possibility of recognition, of love, of the coalescence of our rescue, bestowing asylum from sharing this deathless solitude, remains aloof in the division of our mystery, swallowed by the fathoms of an impassable breach. Can it really be true, despite that right here, right now, in this moment, I may reach out and touch you? There is always an ever-present expanse designed by the impenetrable loneliness of our being, that even in the rhythmic throes of coital unity, we can never truly know one another. Okay, and this last poem I'd like to share with you is entitled "The Light That Was Eurydice." I teach a Greek and Roman mythology class, and I love it. I love mythology. I've been familiar with the Greek myths since I was in middle school and high school. And I remember early on having an affection for the story of Orpheus and Eurydice. I liked Orpheus. You know, he was not your typical hero. He was a hero, but he was not the warrior type hero. He didn't carry a sword, he carried a lyre. And his courage was his passion, his music, his art. And I was also attracted to the sadness of the story. It wasn't until later on in my life, in my early 20s, when I did lose a partner who passed away, that I was able to connect and relate to the story of Orpheus and Eurydice on a whole new level. Grief is one of the most powerful emotions any of us can ever feel. And I liked how Orpheus, you know, he felt so inspired by his grief and his love loss, he couldn't accept it. And he was going to try to win her back, bring her back. And he believed that what he felt was so strong that he could do that. I remember always thinking that it was cruel, however, like how cruel time can be. When someone that we love dies, time doesn't stop. Not even for 1 second, it just keeps going. Even though our whole world on the inside is broken apart. And there's like an indifference to time. And I understand it has to be that way. You know, if things did stop, then we would probably get stuck in our pain and in our grief. So, you know, things have to keep going. But if you don't know the story of Orpheus and Eurydice, Orpheus was the most talented musician in all of the world. And he would sit in the forest and he would play his lyre, which is a small harp. And villagers, people, animals, even the trees and the rocks and the plants would all listen to his music, equally adoring him. And in fact, that is how Eurydice was born. Eurydice was a beautiful tree nymph, and she was born from a tree. And what made her awake into life was that she heard Orpheus's music. And so they find each other, and they fall in love, and they spend their days together, and they get married, and they're madly in love with each other. And but their love is cut short. One day, Eurydice is accosted by a satyr in the forest, and she falls into a pit of venomous snakes. And she is bit on the leg by one of the snakes, and she dies from the venom. And Orpheus, understandably, is completely devastated. He's grief-stricken. He can't accept it. He can't accept her death. It's so unfair. And so he believes that he can take this pain that he feels, this love that he has for her, this grief, and combine it with his passion, with his art for music, and he believes that that'll be enough, that he can descend into the underworld and bring her back. He can undo the order of the cosmos, because what he feels is so powerful. And so Orpheus sets out to do just that. He goes into the underworld armed with nothing but his lyre, and he persuades Charon, the boatman, to bring him across the river Styx. And then he subdues Cerberus, the three-headed dog who guards the gates to Hades. And then he gets an audience with Hades and Persephone, the king and queen of the underworld. And he plays his song. And here are two, a god and a goddess, and Hades especially, being immortal. How could the immortal ever understand the loss of death, or heartache, or love loss, or grief like a mortal can? He can't. But because Orpheus' song, he could hear Orpheus' music, Hades was able to feel it. And he was able to recognize what a tragedy had occurred. And this is like one of the only times in Greek mythology where Hades concedes. And he allows Orpheus to take Eurydice back from the dead. However, it's on one condition. Eurydice has to walk behind Orpheus all the way back out of the underworld towards the surface. And the whole time, Orpheus cannot turn back and look at her. So they set off on their ascent back to the surface. And Eurydice is a shade at this point because she's been in the underworld. So she does not make any sound. And Orpheus, he can't hear her. And throughout their journey towards the surface, he begins to get filled with his doubt and his fear and his insecurity. And as they get to the very last part of the ascent, the myth has some variations there. Some say that Orpheus couldn't take it anymore and he just turned around and looked. Others say that as Eurydice got closer to the surface of the earth, she started to take on her mortal form again, and she stumbles and calls out because she trips. And just by reflex, hearing his lover call his name, Orpheus turns around. But all the versions say that the last thing that Orpheus sees is Eurydice being sucked back into the underworld, disappearing into that dark cavern. So he loses her twice. And it's just, there's a resounding message there that death is unconquerable. There's no undoing it. We all submit to it. So this poem is called The Light That Was Eurydice, and it's mainly focuses on Orpheus's pain. World ascending lament, sorrow pouring through fingertips, delicately strumming the melodic melancholy of living and loss. That all of nature might weep, oceans and riverbeds quivering with sobs, that the gods might understand the fragile impermanence of mortality, of momentary bliss, defying the inescapable links of perpetuity, of such sacred love that could extract recognition's tear upon the cold, stony cheek of the underworld's immovable warden. To have held her in youth's season, the fragrance of unspoiled heart, the gentle deliberateness of wanting body, sweet words for the thoughts of innocent confessions, shared time, brief, yet resounding with worth. To ache with such memories, manifesting their emptying pain upon reaching hands, the hollowness swallowed between your arms, to have held her as she grew cold, the rich sustenance of her soul fleeting through the strain of your desperate muscle. Sentiments beyond words echo throughout the depths of your being, a silence illuminated in the relaxed muscles of her face, tracing the unreachable dawns of a future which once held her, now gradually dissolving behind her vacant stare. The light that was Eurydice, all notions of every private thing shared, desires and what they meant, the significance of growth together, disappearing into shade, slipping from behind the fading sparkle in her eyes, empty mirrors palely reflecting the observant radiance of Helios. Decomposition sets in, the softening of skin, yet somehow tightened across bone like a leaf begging to be touched by the rain. The life, the animation, the essence gone from even the air that surrounds her corpse, the shadow of her spirit, the shimmer of her aura, beyond what you can sense, just slumbering now in the sacred silence of eternity. And you weep, the endless sorrows of mortality, of such loneliness no world can contain. The song of love's suffering is a river born from your orphaned heart, the mightiest source of purpose, depthless, chasmic, infinite, with enough water to drown all creation. Thank you. Again, this is my book, Romancing the Void. I did publish under a pen name. It's V.E. Galyrae. You can find it on Amazon. It's $7 for a hardback, or for like $2.99 you can get the Kindle version. Thank you, and have a good night.